Could we talk particularly about training?
Yes.
Because it's something obviously of interest to both of us. And I wonder, I don't at all want to put you on the spot here, but I wondered if you were designing psychoanalytic trainings now, what would be in the course in terms of addressing this issue, these issues of race and culture? How would you do it?
That is a very difficult one, because the psychoanalytic training, which I did, I studied the likes of Freud and Klein and various other people. They are all people within the psychoanalytic. We can't do without them. They've influenced the training. The only other thing I can think about is we need more people of just a lot more diversity. It's not just limited to people of colour. This is all about.
But how's that going to be done?
Differences.
How's it going to be diversified?
I think we just need more writers. I mean, one of the things that I think is a fault within the training in a way, because just trying to write and publish, is that it takes about a year to publish anything, which just puts anybody off. You know, why would you do it? We need to simplify that.
And there need to be journals.
And there needs to be journals, so that and a lot more, so that people are actually encouraged to share and talk about their own experiences. I taught difference and diversity on one of the on the postgraduate training, and one of the things I did feel teaching that is just making it a lot more experiential, and perhaps not sort of being too focused on the literature, and just more focused on people's experience. I just think just more books, more diversity. I don't know how we're going to get that diversity, because it's one of those things that it's quite clear that there is a need for it, but people of colour are not coming forward. First of all, the training it's incredibly expensive, but also it doesn't really cater for their needs.
Well, there's no wish to interest people of colour in the training.
Absolutely.
And that's really strange.
Well, I mean, we live in a predominantly white world. I mean, how can we change that other than having people of colour who are on the training, who are taking various aspects, teaching various things from clinical supervision to, lecturing. But I don't actually think it's just about that, because it's a bit like equal opportunity. You employ somebody of colour and there's a tick box. I mean, something else needs to change. And I don't believe that onus lies within a person of colour to make that change, because they're having to work incredibly hard to convince the majority that this is the way we need to go. What would you suggest would be a good way of going forward with this?
I do sort of believe in education sort of naively. I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? When we talk about this, Fanon we know about and lots of people know about, but after that, how many names are there? Now, of course, there are reasons for this, but it would seem to me that I would be keen, I think, to simply raise the fact that this is an issue, that this is a white supremacist culture. So I think on psychoanalytic trainings, there should be, as it were, a course on what it might mean to live in a culture like that, and to have lived historically for hundreds of years, so that something of the evolution of this is taught. And then I think I would want to make it a group project, which is how do we, trainees and supposedly trainers, make this genuinely more diverse. And I think the experiential thing is very, very important here, because I think that in a way the risk is that it becomes a seminar, and there's a limit to what seminars can do, it seems to me, in these situations. People need to be able to reflect in groups in which they feel safe enough on what their experience of these things has been like. And I think that's one place to start. I also think that that there needs to be a sort of, if you look, I know you know this, but if you look at, there are a few references in Winnicott and Klein and Freud to people of colour. Very, very few, but they're there. And they're really worth looking at. because they're quite revealing. Freud talks about primitive races, obviously. Now, in a way, you could say, well, this is how they all talked then, because it doesn't make it any better. It just simply it gives it historical rationalisation. So that I think how people of colour have sort of been incorporated into psychoanalytic writing, and of course disincorporated, I left out. So that I think would be worth looking at. I also think that there's got to be some reflection on the consequences for psychoanalytic theory of having been part of white supremacism. Because it has to be there. It's not, it's not impartial, this. This is a very, very culturally specific moment if we talk about British psychoanalysis, in British psychoanalysis.
I think there is a shift, however slight. My worry is, are we going to go back to the status quo? The reason being that the shift hasn't been particularly welcomed by the majority, and we need the majority to embrace this. Baldwin said something very interesting, that, and he specifically referred to as, the white man would not look at something in his life, about the black man, that he's not able to reflect in his own life. And I guess the point he's sort of trying to make is, I on my understanding of that is, why should people do it? Why would they want to do it?
Yeah. Why would their lives be better if they did it?
Why would their lives be better if they did it? Yeah. They're having to go out of their way. Why would you give up something that's comfortable, okay, privileged, to entertain something else that actually, in a way, you've convinced yourself is problematic
and discomforting, and actually will destroy your sense of security.
Exactly. And in the meantime, we've got the likes of Black Lives Matter, and people out there sort of pushing and struggling and wanting a better life.
But then there's Black Lives Matter, and then people turn up and say, but white lives matter.
Yes.
And you think, and there's more of the problem.
And all lives matter.
Yeah, all lives matter, exactly.
We all agree that all lives matter, exactly. Especially in our work. Of course. All lives matter,
that's
and that goes without saying.
It's like saying nothing.
Yes. But it's also like trying to shut down the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this has been the problem, hasn't it? Sort of over years, a wish to shut down the conversation.
Yeah. But that's why I think, in a way, psychoanalysis is particularly interesting in relation to this, because psychoanalysis claims to be the profession that wants to listen, that is open for conversation. So here's, as it were, the great cultural monument, supposedly, to openness, to a certain version of liberalism, to a certain version of, to listening, to difference.
What are we doing about it?
Absolutely. Where are we going with it? Where are the people of colour? I mean, why hasn't this been embraced by a great diversity of people? Oh, the answer is because I don't really know what the answer is, but one of the answers is it's not appealing, it's not alluring, it doesn't address a whole range of people's preoccupations.
But I think also it hasn't actually been sold to them. And perhaps
how would you sell it to them?
Well, I think maybe there is a wish to keep it.
I agree with that, for sure. But let's imagine we wanted to sell it to them, whoever they are. What would we do differently, do you think?
Well, you certainly need a lot more people who are going to be able to think like them.
Yeah.
In positions of power.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that's just within psychoanalysis, which actually works. Because you kind of need someone who's going to be able to. You don't need to kind of like say, this is what happened to me, and that person says, I get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain to me what happened to you, because I know what happened to you, because I can relate to what happened to you. And I think this is the problem, and this is the problem with the training, the fact that one is having to explain why that was painful, why that hurt. and then you're told, well, it's because you've got a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And you're like, no.
And so it goes on.
And it goes
forever.
on. And it's kind of like, no, I actually felt hurt by what that person said, something in that conversation. But then there is not an ability to understand it.
Or enough curiosity about it.
Or not curiosity about it.